Hi my lovelies, welcome back to my channel, and for everybody who is new, I'm Leorah and I'm so glad you found me. So welcome to this very special video to me, and this is probably the most special and closest to my heart video that I have done in that almost 1 year of my journey on YouTube. And I feel it is a little bit like off the charts. I don't even know how to begin, because this video is about my dad, and for me my dad was Papa. You know, that's how I called him. So my dad died 5 years ago, and today when you see this is his anniversary of his passing. I'm going to try, if I can, to put subtitles in, the kind of subtitles that YouTube generates by itself. So I don't know about the quality, and I don't know if I'm even able to do this, but I'm going to try, because I want my mom to be able to understand what I'm saying. Because you know what? My mom watches all my videos because she wants to support me, and she wants to give me the watch hours because she knows that I need it in order to grow my channel. And even though she doesn't understand what I'm saying, so that's love, right? That's motherly love. I love you, Mom. So this video is really also for her, and also in memory of my dad, because it's just we were all in this together. And more than anything, I really want to focus on the story of how he died, because that sort of made me realize a lot about his life. So but let's start a different way. First of all, this is gonna be a very chatty video, so this is just quality time. Just sit down with me, okay? And if I'm rambling, or if I'm, you know, it's a hard video for me to make, and I have no notes, nothing, you know, so I just try to be in the moment and try to take it from there. Okay, girls, my dad was a very special man. He was, if I'm not mistaken, he was 84 when he died, but he was healthy, more or less. You know, he had the normal things that people who are getting older have, you know, like higher blood pressure and things like this, the normal wear and tear sort of, you know. But other than that, he was a healthy man, and that was a huge blessing. And you know what? When I was younger, I always loved him. And I knew that I always had a very special place in his heart, because I was his youngest daughter, the princess, you know. And I actually, this is when my journey of becoming a queen started, because for him I was the princess. And I know from my mom that I was the one of all of our kids, like all of my siblings, who was sort of allowed to tell him stuff, you know, who had like a special access to his heart. And I don't know why, I don't know anything that I did to deserve this, but that's my mom told me this. So I wasn't even aware of this. I thought this is normal, you know, but we had a very special bond going on, and I loved him, you know, a lot. Obviously. I had a very nice childhood, and even though my parents were not in the position to fulfill like all of my dreams, or many of my dreams even, because we were 5 kids and my father was the only provider in the family. My mom had jobs here and there, but he was the provider, and he did not have a very good paying job at all. So when I grew up, I was always under the impression that we are struggling a bit, but and we don't have enough. But he gave me the feeling that I still can have whatever I want. Not that I ever got it, but just that feeling, you know, that girl, you are so special, you can have whatever you want. And I don't even know that he meant it in financial ways or anything like that. It was more a feeling above that, you know, that what he gave me. And I only realize it now. Funny funny that I realize so many things now that I'm getting older. I understand him so much better, and I wish I could tell him that now, you know. I wish I could tell him. Anyway, well, this is hard. I didn't think it would be that hard. I thought enough years have passed that I can do this without being like too emotionally all over the place, but I guess I can't because it's still my dad, you know, and in so many ways I still miss him so much. Not on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of years before he died he was already not part of my day-to-day life because I had moved to a different continent, you know, and we were talking on the phone like twice a week or something like that, but most of the time I was talking to my mom and he just heard me on the loudspeaker on the phone, you know, so I was usually not even talking to him, but I know in the background he was always there, he was giving his input. And you know what, there were times when I wanted to leave Israel, when I wanted to go back home to Germany, and because I felt like I can't do it, it's too hard, I'm alone here, I can't. And I know this one Friday afternoon right before Shabbat, and I knew that I would be alone on Shabbat, and Shabbat is not made for being alone. It's for being in a family or for being at least with friends, but I didn't know anyone. I mean, not really. So, and I was struggling because when you're alone, time passes by so slowly, right? So it was a Friday afternoon and I spoke to them and I said, Mom, I want to come back home. I'm going to book a flight and I'm going to come back home. And I remember that he took the phone out of her hand, and I'm not going to use the words he said because I've never heard him speak to me like that harshly, because don't forget, I was the princess, right? But he said, girl, you're going to stay where you are, because he was the first one to have the vision for me. He knew that this was my place before I knew it. You know, I had to do that, like, how do you say that? I had to take the step to actually go here and move here into this country and build a new life for my own, for myself and all of that. But I sort of felt that this is what I have to do, but I didn't have the vision yet. That only came later for me. But he had it and he knew it, and he was not gonna let me. But like he didn't want me to flee from my destination where I was supposed to go. So I never got to thank him, you know. I never got to say so many things to him. So let me go to that story, because this is going to be very, very long. So let me get to the story where when he actually came here to die. He didn't come here to die, but I think that he sort of had I don't know, like he sort of knew. There's so much, I don't even know how to tell all this. My parents regularly came for a longer stretch, like a longer amount of time during the winter, because the winter in Europe can be very hard, and so they came something like 4 weeks, 6 weeks to us through the winter, during the winter. And that time when they came for 6 weeks. So we had planned to celebrate Shiloh's first birthday. He is now 6, and Akiva's something birthday. Maybe what was it? 8th birthday? I don't know. Anyway, so it was 2 of the birthdays we wanted to celebrate, and I also had another thing going on. I was undergoing severe medical treatments in that time, and my husband was gonna have to travel to the States, so they were gonna be here to support me because I had 4 kids, quite small still. At that time, and I knew I would have to undergo those treatments, and they wanted to support me. So he came and we celebrated Shiloh's first birthday, and Shiloh actually started walking with my dad. He took his first steps with my dad, and in so many ways Shiloh is like my dad. Sometimes when he stands and sometimes when he looks at me, I see my dad in him in so many ways. Anyway, so they had a special thing going on, and unfortunately Shiloh doesn't remember my dad at all, just from pictures, you know, it's sad. But anyway, and then we celebrated 3 weeks after Shiloh's birthday, we celebrated Akiva's birthday, and I think it was the 8th. I can't do the math now. It's just too much for my brain right now. Anyway, so we celebrated his birthday, and we had a birthday party in the afternoon. and I had made cake, and you know, we invited the rest of the family, my husband's side of the family, and we had this birthday party, and it was nice. And I actually have that one picture that I think I'm gonna include that before I start this video, so you have seen it already. That was the last picture that I took of him. So that was at the birthday party when he was sitting at the table there. Well, we were all sitting around the table. And I remember we gave Shiloh, who was 1 year old, a big piece of birthday cake, and he made such a mess. There was so much chocolate cake on the floor. And we just had fun, so it was nice. Anyway, so after we had cleaned up, nobody wanted to eat dinner anymore, so I know that we just cleaned up, and then we sat down and we just enjoyed the quiet, because the whole afternoon was so busy and everything, and loud with all the kids and everything. So we just sat down and we had a schnapps, you know, to drink to Akiba's life. How does one say that? You know, you will let me know how to say that. Anyway, and for digestion, of course, because he had problems digesting sweet stuff, the heavy stuff. Anyway, so and that's the last thing basically I gave to him, you know, the cake and the schnapps. So I never made that cake again, because I always felt that it was the last thing my father ate, and I just couldn't bring myself making that cake again. And it was some kind of cheesecake with chocolate, and it's so good, but I could not ever make that cake again. Anyway, so on that evening, the same evening, I had put the kids to bed, and I had to have I went to my support group, you know, my eating support group that I've spoken about in my weight loss story, and I had to go there at something like 8:30 in the evening. And at that point, my husband and my parents were sitting at the couch in the living room, and they were just sort of, you know, slowing down and you know, hanging out together and just talking a little bit. And I sat with them a little bit before I had to leave, and we were making plans for the next day. And my dad told me that he was reading a book about Israel, and there is something special that he wanted to see. And I said, you know what, if the weather is nice tomorrow morning, we're gonna go and do that. And then I just really had enough of this day, you know. It was a very strenuous day, and then knowing that I still have to go to my support group and all of that, and I really just wanted to go to sleep. So I was a little bit on the annoyed side, and I said I have to go now, good night, and I left. And I knew, usually I give my parents hugs, and usually I say good night, and usually I say I love you when we separate in the evening, and I didn't, because I was stubborn and I was stupid, and I never forgave myself for this, because that's the last time I saw him. And so I went to my food group, and then I came back and I went to bed and whatever. And then the next morning at 5:15 in the morning, we heard my mom coming down the steps from the guest room, breathing heavily, and she then came to our room and she said, "I think Dad just died." And we were just jumping out of bed and running upstairs, and my husband got on the phone immediately to call the emergency services, and I ran upstairs. And I'm a nurse, right? I was supposed to kick into action, and I saw him lying there, and I knew exactly what had happened. I knew he was dead, but I couldn't do anything. I didn't even want to touch him. I did not want to have that feeling of him being dead, you know? So I was just standing there wasting valuable time, just looking at him and not believing what I was seeing, because yes, today we were making plans. We were supposed to go and see the country today. So what was he doing dying, right? So then within like a very short time, the emergency services came, and I think I just got myself to force myself to take his pulse. I couldn't find a pulse anymore. And they dragged him off the bed, and they immediately started to do, you know, try to resuscitate him. And my mom and I, we were just standing in this room, and we were just holding each other, and we were crying, and we were praying, and we knew that he didn't want to come back, you know. We knew that what they were doing, the emergency services, as amazing as they were, that was not what my dad wanted. He had prayed for this to happen, to go in his sleep. I remember him years and years and years ago. He told me, if I want to die, I'm praying for a merciful death where I either just drop while I'm walking, you know, just drop dead, or just go in my sleep. So he got what he wanted, and we thought, if he comes back now and he's gonna have so much brain damage now, you know, after being without oxygen for so long, this is gonna be horrible for him. So we asked him while they were we were asking God while we were hugging each other and crying and not wanting him to go. We were asking God to receive him, because wow, because we knew that that's what he wanted, you know, he was ready. And he got declared, or his death was declared 45 minutes later. And then all this craziness hit, you know, all the craziness that police came and everything, you know, and I had to suddenly, I was in charge of him because he is not an Israeli citizen, but I am. So I had to suddenly be in charge of him and decide what to do with his body and things like this. And I was so overwhelmed, and I didn't know what to do. So it was extremely hard. Plus, I blamed myself so bad for him dying, you know, because I thought if I would have kicked into action immediately, maybe we could have saved him without brain damage or something like this, you know. So we had to organize to get his body transferred back to Germany, because my mom wanted him to be buried in Germany where she lives, and all of that within just a couple of days. And that I had to do all of this, and I didn't even realize at some point that I was really mourning. I couldn't, you know, it was too hard. And then my mom had to fly back with my dad, sort of, and my husband also flew to Germany to go to the funeral, and I couldn't because of my medical treatments, and it was just horrible. I was crying, and I had my 4 small kids, and I couldn't really, they were traumatized and I was traumatized, and it was so hard, and I couldn't sleep anymore. Every single night I saw him standing there at on the landing on the way up to the guest room and just looking at me. And every single night I had to relive this horrible event of him dying, or I had to organize a funeral or things like this, and that went on for so long, you know. And then at some point in my dream I had to send him away. I said, Dad, you're killing me. I cannot do this. You have to go where you're supposed to be. You cannot linger around here. You have to be with the dead, and I have to be with the living, and you have to let me be, you know. And then it was good. It was not negative or anything, you know. It was just that I still felt like he's there. And maybe that was just because I couldn't let go and I couldn't forgive myself, but I had to, because on the day of his funeral, when my whole family basically was in Germany to attend the funeral, I had a doctor's appointment on that morning, and I had a blood test, and they called me back 2 hours after the blood test, and they told me, Leorah, you're pregnant. So then they told me the amount of my pregnancy hormones, and it was super high. So I knew that I was going to have twins, and this is Malki and Golani, my second set of twins. So on the day of my father's funeral, I was told that I'm going to have a baby. I mean, they didn't tell me that it's going to be twins, but I knew it. I knew it. So I called my husband after the funeral, and I told him, and we actually announced, we never announced a pregnancy that early, but we actually announced it over the phone on that day when my whole family was gathered together and mourning for my dad. We told them that we were expecting, and we sort of felt that there had been an exchange, you know, and that's why we also called Golan, his second name is Avishalom, which is sort of a version of my father's name. And we sort of felt like we got another life back for my dad. And I don't know, it was the weirdest time. I felt like singing from joy about this pregnancy, and at the same time I was crying my eyes out for my dad, and it was insane, absolutely insane. So then my husband came back from Germany, and a couple days later we went for our first ultrasound, and then we found out that it was really twins. So I knew already anyway, but that was amazing. So we did not tell anyone that it is twins for a couple weeks after that, but I don't know, I never felt like I really mourned for my dad, because first I had to kick into action to organize the funeral and bringing the body back to Germany, and then I immediately found out that I'm pregnant, so I had to protect my pregnancy. And then I thought, okay, so once the babies are born, I'm going to mourn, and then I couldn't because I was too busy. I don't know how I ever got through this. I don't think I ever really properly mourned. You know, my sister, who lives in the same house with my parents, or now with my mom, she actually got to mourn. She mourned really, like, it was so hard for her, because she also saw them on a regular day-to-day basis, so of course it's a totally different ballgame. But she also saw his belongings everywhere in the house, his gardening shoes standing in the hallway, or his gardening tools in the tool shed, or his car, or whatever, you know. These are all the things that I'm not exposed to. So she had to actually call in sick for, I don't know, a week or something, and she couldn't eat, and she couldn't, for me it was different. I mean, I was throwing up anyway because I was pregnant, but I was sick to my stomach, and I couldn't let myself go there, and that was a whole different kind of mourning. But in all of that, in all of those years that have passed now, that I'm getting older, and I am a parent of 7 kids now, and I'm just realizing how amazing he really was, and that I can never ever tell him that anymore. And I know when I say that to my mom, she says he knows that, and he knows that you loved him, and he knows all of this, you know. But I, for myself, would have loved to still tell him that I love him, you know. And now when I have questions in life, you know, about raising my kids, or about should I go this way or that way, I know that he would have been a good source of wisdom for me. And I don't have it anymore. So I have other people to advise me if I want, you know, if I'm asking for advice. But I do miss him a lot. Yeah, so that's my dad. He was there. He was not a loud person. He was not a person who would understand anything about makeup or about styling. When I spoke in preparation of this video, I asked my mom what was my father's favorite color. I had no idea. And then she said it was never really a subject for us to talk about, you know? And I thought, wow, this is really a different generation where they came from. Because my dad was quite old when he had me. He was already 50 years old when I was born. So that's why he was already 80, like he was 84 when he died. It's really a different generation. He experienced the Second World War. And, you know, so I don't know. I hope this is not boring. But for me, this is my life, and this hits very close to home, and I had to have him die here in my house, you know. I saw him carrying him out on the stretcher into the ambulance that took him to the place where they prepare the bodies for the trip on the plane. And it was the hardest thing, you know. It was so hard, and I wish it wouldn't have happened in my house, But on the other hand, I know that this is how he wanted it to be. I think it was somewhat of a dream of him to die in Israel, because he always considered this his home, even though it never was. And I sort of felt about his death that in that night God came to him and asked him if he's ready, and it's sort of like all the stars are suddenly lining up into the right position, and he was ready to go, and he just said, yes, okay, I'm coming, you know. And yeah, oh, wow. I hope that I can be like that one day. Wow. Okay, so my only regret is that I did not get to tell him my last I love you. And this is what I tell my husband all the time, because he still has his parents. I tell him, tell them that you love him, you know, tell them, because you never know, you know. And it's the best thing to know that the last thing you said to each other is I love you, right? So I have to get offline because I'm falling apart, obviously, so I hope anyone wants to see this. I'm just gonna say goodbye, you know. I'm not gonna do the usual thing because today is just special. So I love you, and you know, in all of this, maybe you can take your own lessons from this. And if you still have your parents, or for that matter your loved ones, anyone, your husband or your kids, tell them that you love them. Tell them every day, you know. I love you, and I see you here next time. And next time I'm not crying, I promise. So go ahead and sparkle. You can sparkle with tears too, you know, there's no shame in that. It's okay. I love you, and I see you next time. Bye.